Welcome to the Radiator Arms, where dot matrix printers go to die. And today we are going to be covering dream cars. Do they change as we grow up? Roll the intro.
That was a better intro, that one.
Keep it tight.
Tight like my pants.
That's your keeper.
You can't do that to me. You can't. Okay, there's so much that's going to cut out.
Yep. Yes.
Stop it! Stop it!
You know what? I absolutely love that intro. And if you're new to the Radiator Arms, that was actually written, produced, and performed by our good friend Will the Plank. Say hello.
Hello, everyone.
And again, we have our special guest, Ben the Sparkle, also from Mile By Mile Valeting.
Hello.
And I'm Ant from Sports and Touring and co-founder of JayEmm and Friends. So, as we said, we're going to be talking about dream cars. But before we get into that, I really want to know, is there anything that's happened that you folks really feel the need to get off your chest?
Not so much off my chest, but I went to somewhere pretty cool on Sunday.
Nice.
And the previous Sunday as well. I went to Porsche in the Park, which is a really, really good event. I'm not quite sure who is involved in the organising and the production of that, but it was a really, really good event to go to. I would definitely recommend it if you're into Porsches or not, really. But last Sunday, just a few days ago, I went to the Henry's Car Barn Cars and Coffee, which was just a really nice, chill event. You have to be invited, so obviously not for everyone, but no, not like that. I'm doing some work with them. And they were serving some incredibly nice pizzas, but the cars there, oh my God, it was like just one of twos, like just irreplaceable stuff. And I saw something incredibly cool, which I'm not actually allowed to say is in there, because the person who I have contact with said, oh, I didn't even know that was in here. You definitely can't tell people it's there. It was, I'll tell you both afterwards, it was awesome. I haven't even got any pictures of it. No pictures.
Wow. Well, I mean, that's great because you've got lots of inspiration for today's topic, dream cars.
Yes.
Will, how about you?
I have been doing two very interesting things. One, I nearly bought a car the other week. I went and I viewed a Jaguar XJ6. It was 2003 XJ6. It was 3-litre V6. And it was up for £1,000.
Oh dear.
So you can probably see why I didn't end up buying it, because there's always a caveat with a cheap luxury car. Now, on the surface of things, it actually had a really great service history, and it was, it was meticulously maintained. It had everything done that it needed. There's pages and pages, reams upon reams of work it had done. It had all the major failure points on the car had been done. It had a couple of small little bits here and there, which would have been a little bit of tinkering. Because I think I've said before, I'm kind of on the way to looking to replace the Golf with something at some point. I wasn't necessarily going to be serious about buying this Jag. I just needed to look. There were two things about it that turned me off buying the car. Would you like to know what they are?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
First was when I was driving it around, and it said it was doing no better than 15 to 16 miles per gallon anywhere. The second reason, which is probably the reason it wasn't doing any better than 15 to 16 miles per gallon anywhere, was because the timing chains were on their way out, sadly. Oh. It was such a shame because that idle and through general revs, it sounded smooth and stuff like that. But when I was driving it, I was like, it's just a little slow for 240 odd horsepower. It feels like it's hesitating a bit. So, I got onto an open road, put the foot down, kicked down. It sounded like somebody had put gravel inside the engine. And then a restricted performance light came on and it would go off. Came on and went off, obviously, as the cams and, and everything is going out of time with each other. So I was like, right, I'm going to turn this around. I think that's enough test driving for me. And the car, as I was entering a 60-mile-an-hour road, decided it only wanted to do 20. So there was a little while where I thought, I'm going to get rear-ended in this. This is going to end in tears. But then suddenly it did get up to speed. And so that was my story of why, which is such a shame. The seller, to be fair to them, and I genuinely do believe this because they are not car-centric at all, said, well, it's always been a bit slow. It's just an old Jag with the V6. It's not a V8 or anything. And he was genuinely, you could see he was absolutely miffed. He said, I always babied it. I never took it hard. I never drove it hard. And I kind of believe it, to be honest, because it didn't make any noise. You know, it was only when you got it up into that high RPM, and I probably slipped by booting it. I probably pulled it out of time a little bit more. So sorry, seller, but yeah.
That honestly sounds like scrap.
It probably is, which is such a shame because the rest of the car was so good. It didn't have any advanced corrosion, nothing like that. It just was, the interior was this lovely, it was black on black with silver wheels, and it looked the nuts. It looked like London gangster spec. But, you know, even before I realised that it had a problem, halfway through the test drive, I was like, I've already got the Merc, which fits the bill for the big, long, wafty cruiser. So I was umming and ahhing that. It's only because it was cheap, but yeah, cheap for a reason.
Yeah, it's cheap for a time. And I just have one more thing that happened to me this week.
Yep.
The Mondeo
Yep.
that people may or may not be aware of that I was using for work is gone.
Hey, hopefully you didn't lose too much money on it.
That is a yay at this point because it cost me 500 quid to buy, £1,000 to start sorting things out, and then the power shift gearbox decided to not work anymore. Yes. So I sold it to a scrap merchant for £230 after putting £1,500 into it. So I'm glad to see the back of it.
Ouch. Yeah, that does happen from time to time. But that's the gamble, as we know, with cheap cars.
Oh, yes.
It is kind of the way the cookie crumbles. And the last thing I did of interest is I've had the Celica. Yes, I've had James's Celica for the past kind of week or so, and I've been making some videos on that and driving that around. I did a little bit of errands for him as well. I took some parts down to somewhere for the S2000 actually, which hopefully is going to be making a return to the main channel soon. So watch JayEmm on Cars and have a look there if you haven't already. And yeah, hopefully we'll all get to have a go on the S2000. Have you ever driven the S2000, Ant?
I have. That was one of the early videos. In fact, that was the first video that James and I did together.
Was it?
Yeah. So I brought him my 370Z
Yep.
Nismo, gave that to him. He gave me his S2000, and I made a video for Sports and Touring on the S2000, and he made a video for JayEmm on Cars with that, and that's how our friendship began.
Excellent. So, but he's got like a
surprise, I was going to say.
Let's not say anything.
Yeah.
Okay, so cut that bit out. He's got a blank, can't tell you what has happened to that car, but when it is revealed.
Everyone knows that there's work happening on the car.
Right.
I think we can.
Well, there's been work happening on the car. Honestly, I remember listening to his, like, I've got an S2000 introduction. Like, this is going to be a car that's on the channel. When I was working a job, quite honestly, about 4 or 5 years ago, during COVID, when I was having to work on my own, and I've just got my AirPods in and I'm listening to it, and it still is quite odd now because obviously I didn't know Jay at that point.
Yeah,
you know, I started hanging out with him about 2 years ago, so it's still very quite odd for me that I still haven't even seen that car. It's been gone for so long.
It's like how I haven't seen the 370Z in person either.
No, neither have I.
There is a big story coming on that.
Oh,
but I can't tell you what it is right now. It's big. And it's not good.
Oh.
But we'll save that for another day, because my story today is a bit more positive. Last time, if you were listening to the podcast, you would know that I was selling my Audi R8 GT Spider. And if you watched it on YouTube, then you'll know that it was sold, because we put an overlay up on the screen to show you that it had been sold. So that is my big news. The R8 GT Spider has been sold. The buyer is a subscriber to both JayEmm and Friends and Sports and Touring.
Oh, excellent.
And he got in touch with me pretty soon after the video went up. In fact, because I mentioned it on one of the podcast episodes, hadn't I?
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly how, but he ended up talking to me, and I sent him a preview of the It's For Sale video. And then after it went live, he then said, look, I want to come and see the car, but he was away on holiday. He came back from holiday, came and saw the car. He arrived on the bus. I picked him up from a nearby bus stop. So I was like, he's buying this car today. The only thing that can happen now is I can talk him out of it. That's it. Because he's already decided. So I was very happy. So I hope you're enjoying the car. You know who you are. And yeah,
isn't it nice that it's gone to a viewer? It's not someone random, somebody that will have known the story with the car and they'll have had a bit of a connection with it.
Yeah, he said to me that he thinks that he's put another 1,000 views on my R8 GT Spider playlist.
Excellent.
So he'd gone back and watched everything start to finish. He was even saying he even knew that I had a 118 scale model of the of the R8 in my spec of the actual GT.
Wow.
And that was found by my son, and he got me that as a gift a few years ago. And he even knew about that and that had been mentioned in probably one of the most obscure videos that had like the least amount of views in that whole playlist. And he even knew about that. And he was like, "You're not giving that away with the car." I was like, "No, that you can have the launch book. It's got this beautiful boxed launch book, hardback cover, with all the specs and the prices, even of all of the options at the time, and yeah, with lovely pictures and fold out pages." I gave that to him, but and the full history folder. But yeah, he was not getting my one memento.
Well, the thing is with something like that, there's the possibility for you to see the car again, isn't there? Maybe at a car show, or one day, you never know, if the tables turn and you want to buy the thing back, because you never know, there might be the opportunity, if you're still in good contact with someone, to go, do you know what, when you're done with it, let me know. And you never know, it could come back your way. That is the beauty of things like this, is when you sell a car to the right person, it just is so much nicer for everybody.
Yep.
And it's a good feeling. But you've also been out looking at cars, haven't you?
I have indeed. I have. And wow, it's been an interesting experience, because I don't know, do I want to talk about the details of that? I suppose, yeah, if you are here watching or listening to the podcast, I think you deserve, as a dedicated audience member, to get the scoop on what's been going on before anyone else. Before the mainstream videos come out, you deserve to get the scoop. So I will tell you, yesterday I looked at quite a few different cars, sat in a lot of different cars just to see how I felt in them. And I also test drove one of the cars. And one of the cars we mentioned in the previous episode was the Lexus RCF. And I found one which was a carbon edition, which came with a carbon bonnet, carbon roof, carbon active rear spoiler, a few other bits and pieces, and in white, of course. And I thought, you know what? This fits. There's a few things I wasn't crazy about with the car. The problem was I then started thinking, well, what do I not like about it? And I started looking at, actually, it could sit a bit lower. Oh, it could do with some wheels to get better fitment. Oh, and then, it could do with a nice carbon front splitter. Oh, and then, of course, the side skirts. And then the shopping list started to grow. Now, the car was kind of above my budget already, like in the low 30s. And by the time I'd finished my shopping list, the car and the parts would have come to about 40 grand, which kind of defeats the purpose of what I'm trying to do. And I have to say a special thank you to my son, who chaperoned me and kept me sensible, which you'd think is like the opposite way around. But he kept me sensible. He kept me focused. I really did enjoy the car, but it's like, I don't know if I could leave the car as it was. So now we've started to look at some of the other alternatives that we mentioned in the previous episode. And if you want to know what they are, you can go back and watch it.
You did break my heart when you said you weren't going to go look at one car, which is the Alfa Giulia Quadrifoglio. But you made the good point of it's the brakes, isn't it? That's the big problem for you. And you're not that keen on the styling?
Yeah. So the thing is, I figured there's no point going to see it because, well, I've actually had one for a few days, thanks to James. It was a press car. Made a JayEmm and Friends video on that as well.
Fun fact, that was the first time I ever saw you and Damani in person, because you were filming it on one of the roads we share.
Oh, yeah.
And I came by, and that's when I said that's the very shoot as well. I said to James, I've got a Maestro if you wanna do that. And he said, yeah, send us an email. And then we went from there.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, that's a fun little fact, a fun little beginning of everything there.
I didn't know the connection.
Yep.
But so I just thought, look, there's no point going to see it. I know what it looks like. I know what it feels like. I know what it drives like. So there's just no point. At the moment, I'm just trying to try a few things on for size. So I decided against it. The things I don't like about it are the brakes are a bit weird because it's brake by wire. They didn't quite get it right. There was a few updates. If you get a later model, that just kind of works. I think there was an update that they applied as well. But it's just this weird kind of like change in sense of pressure that you get as you go on the brakes and come off the brakes. It was weird. I actually experienced that at its worst because I got to drive a very early model, which was a demonstrator that Alfa Romeo were taking around the country. It was at Silverstone. They had a whole display and you could sign up for a test drive, and the brakes on that first one was really bad. The one that we got, a later one, was actually not terrible. The thing I don't like about it is the power delivery, because and I said this to James, I drove it properly before he did, and I said, there's something not very good about that power delivery. He said, no. And eventually he drove it and it was like, okay, now I see what you mean. And what happens is in normal or dynamic, what is it, eco and dynamic? I can't remember the lower modes, but dynamic is one of them. As you kind of put the power on, first gear gives you some amount of the power. Second gear gives you some amount of the power. Third gear, about midway through the rev range, when the turbo kicks in, it just gives you all of the power. And it's like, where was all of that? Okay, first, pull the power. Second, you can start giving it to me. And but in third, it was just like suddenly there. Now, you put it in race mode, and that problem goes away. It gives you all the power. You can decide how much of the power with your right foot. And that's how I prefer to drive. Trouble is, in race mode, all the traction is off.
Yeah.
And I don't mean reduced. I mean off. Right? We were out on, I think the day or two after you probably saw us out there. We were on a bone dry road on a warm summer's day. It had great tires on it. I forget which it was now, possibly Michelin Pilot Sports. And the tires were nice and hot. The engine was hot. And I thought, right, I'm ready to try race mode properly now, because I knew this. So I put it into race mode, and the car just started to step out. And I wasn't even going that fast. I wasn't even putting the full throttle. So it's like, you want a little bit of traction, but not no traction. So I think, it means that it makes accessing that in the most enjoyable part of the car, that engine, like dangerous.
And you see, this goes perfectly into the dream car things, because the Giulia Quadrifoglio has been, since it launched, an absolute dream icon car for me, a car that I have lusted after. I think in either the first or the second episode we did of this podcast, James asked me, or maybe you asked me, you win the lottery, what are the cars you're going to buy? And my answer was Giulia Quadrifoglio, Ferrari 355. Now, it's neither of those anymore.
You should drive them.
Oh, yes, absolutely. But from what I understand about the Quadrifoglio, we're probably pretty much in the same as how we want. I probably wouldn't like it as much because of that. The brakes are the biggest killer. Brakes in a car, to me, the feel of that is so important. And as I always say, and I think as you guys say as well, a good braking system when you don't have to think about it at all and you can just use it. If a car hasn't got that, it really limits the ability to have fun in it. Take the Celica up in driving, for instance. Brakes on that are great. Don't have to think about that. I could barrel up to corners, slam it on, use that all-wheel drive system to pull me out. And I tell you what, I was having the best time ever. That is one of the best cars I've ever driven. But, if I was in a Quadrifoglio with more power, but worse brakes and power that comes on strangely, I just don't know if I'd like it as much. And also with the 355, another reason why it's not that I've fallen out of love with the car. I think that car's amazing, but I've really fallen in love with the 348, actually. And I found myself liking the look of that a lot more, which I didn't think would be possible. I think it's because it's so much more kind of angular, a bit more styled in an old school manner. It's like a small Testarossa maybe in its looks, perhaps, is the way I kind of feel how it looks. So that is a car that is high up on my list of wanting to try at some point. Not that I'll ever be able to afford one, let's be honest, or the running costs, but it's one that I'd like to try.
Limiting beliefs, Will. If we've got anything to do with it on this channel, and if I know this particular audience, one day it may be possible. Just
okay.
I don't like it when people say that they're never ever going to achieve something. Let's not limit our beliefs about our future. Let's focus on the things.
Okay,
that we
one
can
day
do.
it may happen.
Yeah, or you can't afford it yet.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's go with yet. But I think you still try those cars. And the Giulia was a car that I thought was quite cool when it first came out. But there's aspects of its styling that I'm not a huge fan of. Plus, I think it's just way too classy for me. I mean, Ben, do you have any sort of current dream cars?
Nothing that's been made in the last 10 years.
Well, we did talk about this on a previous episode where we talked about, what was the peak era for cars, and I think we concluded sort of like around the 2015s ish.
Yeah, 2017.
I think James said 2018. I'm pretty sure
Was the end.
Was the end.
Yeah. That's unfortunate.
That also coincides with the petrol particulate filters.
I think that's one of the reasons why.
Yeah. Because the R8 V10 Plus, the GT that I had for a weekend.
Yes.
That was, and Jay said at the time, there used to be, or there is still, but it's pointless on the facelifted one, a button that you press and it opens the exhaust valves, and it didn't do anything. It was just a placebo button. It just made you feel like the car was making more sound. Whereas on Sunday when I was at the Henry's event, there was one there, but it was an older one. I think it was a 14 or a 15 plate, and my God, it was loud. It was barking. I was like,
oh yeah, that'll have a custom exhaust on it though. Mine had
I had a look. I had a little look, and unless it's been done at the front or whatever, your little tips that you can see behind. Obviously, it's an Audi, so it's fake bumper tips with real ones behind it.
Yeah,
it all looks really stock.
If it's that loud, I guarantee you, it would have been
resonator in
it's
sports.
It's probably had
yeah,
resonators, cats taken out, whatever. But oh my God, it just sounded amazing. But cars did sound amazing back then. But
they really did. Even the Merc that I have has just got a power flow exhaust, and that's just cat back, and that's not massively loud, but you get that sound of the engine. You get
nice
beautiful burble like that, and that's missing on a lot of modern cars. That's why there's so much kind of fake sound trickery. And there's a car recently, I can't remember which it is, in one of the modes puts pops and bangs in the cabin, but it's not coming out the actual exhaust.
Oh yeah, I saw that. What was that recently?
I can't remember what it is. We'll have to look it up and put it on the screen. But
the Americans have got the electric charger coming, which has speakers on the outside, which replicates the sound of a V8. But it's an electric car, and it's horrendously loud because there was an advert being shot somewhere in America, and people were obviously filming this thing. It was being done on a closed street, police, and this thing was charging down the street with the trained driver in it, and it was making all the right noises, but it's damn well electric. And it's just like, wow,
it's
why?
just
the
wrong.
thing is, they would have had to have some proper acoustic chambers and in the speakers or for the enclosures to actually make the thud and the thump of like a V8, V10, V12. The actual, people who have seen them online and only heard them online won't realise that a lot of these cars in person, the actual low end and the bass that comes out of them.
Feel it in your chest.
Feel it in you. I don't know how they're really going to replicate that from a speaker system without having something which contains or uses half of the car's actual hybrid bloody electric battery to make the noise and a 15,000 watt RMS amplifier. Honestly,
that's devastating. But I think the topic you touched on there was about like having dream cars and then, meeting your heroes.
Yeah.
Have you met any yet have you met any yet, and have you yet been disappointed by any?
Well, I have met a hero because I own one now, which is my W124 or C124 Mercedes Coupe. And I love that car. It's everything I thought it would ever be, to be honest. But I'm also at a point, because I had an old W202 back in the day, I know that the car's weakness was always going to be the steering. And that is something that is a weakness in that car. If you tried to get a skate on in that car, you can do it, but the problem is any steering that's around centre, and you've driven it, so you probably know is a little bit darty. It moves over the place. Part of that is because it's just recirculative ball. That is the nature of those. The other part is, I think it's got a couple of idlers or dampers that might be a little bit worn, so it can be improved slightly. But it will always be like, even if you turn the worm drive, whatever it is, up on it, you do it up and tighten the box, there's always going to be a little bit of something. And of course, with that car, you have the 4-speed automatic transmission, where hopes and dreams go in and crushing disappointment come out. But if you look at the car for what it is, which is a vehicle of the time and a cruiser, and you drive it in a way that is appropriate for that kind of car, I like to say this: it's not a supercar, but it's a supercar, because it is so
very good.
cool. You know, I adore that thing, and driving that is just such a pleasure. You know, you feel. I mean, I turned up today with the windows down. I was blaring. I think I was blaring some Easy E or something like that, and I could just see the smile on your face. And yeah,
definitely,
it has road presence, and for that is a hero I have met that I'm glad I own, and lives up to the hype of awesome looking German brick mile muncher.
yeah.
So yeah,
But the thing is, the car, you love the car because of those flaws, because it was so period correct, because that's kind of what you expected. If it was too good, then, well, that's exactly what's wrong with most of the current cars on the market.
Absolutely.
They're just too good at being a car. There's no personality, there's no flaws for you to connect with and understand and learn to drive around. And for me, that is a big part of the character of a car. Ben, what about you? Have you met any of your heroes in recent times?
Well, I've driven a lot of cars that I've obviously seen in movies and played in video games for many years. Thanks to Jay, more than I can even remember now. I need to make a list. But no, not really, because strangely enough, if we start in the beginning, when I started to get into cars, it was because of video games. Colin McRae Rally, TOCA touring cars in the late 90s. And my favourite cars then were the Subaru Impreza and the Renault Laguna, because Plato's Laguna. But the thing that I want to get onto, which is the main topic of all of this, which is, how your tastes change in cars that you sort of lust after over the years and idolize over the years because they've been in games or movies, or just because you saw your neighbor have one and you just fell in love with it. Obviously, I don't want a Laguna anymore. It's just an old four-door French hatchback. I don't want an old Impreza anymore because their engines and gearboxes explode and they rot out from underneath you. And if you go sort of further in time, as I became a teenager, I watched Fast and Furious the same as everyone else did, so I started liking Japanese cars, Evos and stuff. All of those things in real life now, if you were to buy one, even 10 years ago when they were a little bit newer, just become financially ruinous. And I think that's the same with a lot of cars. Like I fell absolutely head over heels when I saw the E60 M5. 5-litre V10, what on the surface looked like a very clever gearbox, actually turned out to be a little bit of a nightmare ownership-wise. Not because I've owned one, but there are horror stories everywhere to do with those cars throwing huge bills.
2 words: rod bearings.
Rod bearings. And also gearbox issues as well because of the SMG.
Yes.
And, but there's so many of those cars that you could just write off in life that you've wanted, that you maybe had people in the 90s might have had an F40 or an F50 on the wall, and they think, oh, when I'm older, when I'm an adult, I can afford it. No, you don't have 3 or 4 or 5 million pounds. You cannot have one. So you're either taken out of it because you lusted after something that wasn't something that you ever wanted in the first place. You didn't want a Renault Laguna. You wanted Plato's Laguna because it was a British touring car. You wanted an F40 because it looked great on a poster, but you don't have 3 million pounds. So unfortunately, that also falls apart. It's time and experience, and also how the cars are treated throughout their life to when you get hold of it, that then takes the shine off of, oh, do I actually want one of these anymore? And also, I might have wanted 10 years ago a Mark II Focus RS. 2 years ago, I wanted one. Now I don't.
So I want to give credit to the person who came up with the idea for this topic. It was actually my son, Damani, who's been on the podcast before and been on the channel. And we were brainstorming yesterday over lunch after we'd done the morning's worth of car shopping. And this was the topic that came up for him. And he said that when he was very, very young, it was cars like the Pagani Zonda and the Koenigsegg CCX.
Yeah.
And obviously he said that was at a time in his life where money came from a magic hole in the wall that only his parents could access. What he didn't realize was that was just essentially printing the money. I know it's not really printing, but metaphorically printing the money that's digitally in your bank account, which you had to work for. And as he's got older and he started to get more of an appreciation for money and how hard you have to work to get that money, he started to realize that those cars might not have been quite within reach. However, they weren't impossible, because at that time, a Zonda was £350,000. A Koenigsegg was around £400,000. They were not 10 times the price as they are now. So whilst it might have been, I don't know, let's say quite far out it was not in his mind at first entirely impossible. It was still not yet for him. But obviously, in the meantime, you've got to work towards something, and he started to find other dream cars. His next dream car was the Lamborghini Gallardo Superleggera 5-litre, the first generation, the pre-LP cars. And for him, like, faced with an opportunity to spend time looking around any of those three cars, today it would be more the Gallardo, because even though they're going up in price, and perhaps going up in price faster than his salary is and getting further away, it still feels like it's an attainable thing within his lifetime. Whereas now all these other cars have gone into the millions. For him, it's so far beyond his current horizon that there's no point thinking about it. The Gallardo is sort of sitting on the horizon. He can kind of see it, but he hasn't quite figured out how to get there yet. And I think that's a big part of it, when reality kicks in and you realize that, well, for one, money is something that you then have to bring in before you can spend it. And then the other part of it being obviously the cost of living and the cost of everything going up much faster than most people's incomes.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. And that's kind of touching on, what Ben was saying as well, is like the reality of the cars and the condition they're in now, and even finding a good one. I always remember that I used to say I wanted an E28 M5, like what my dad had back then. Well, he had the M535, but basically it was that body kit, and it was that straight six engine and everything, the dogleg gearbox and all of that stuff that I was driven around in as a kid, and I thought was the coolest car ever. This is pre the W124 as well. And so I always just say, I would want one of those. One day I will get one. And when I was 18, the prices on them were probably like maybe 10, 15 grand at most then. And that was considered expensive for those cars.
Yep.
Now, I think good ones are 4 or 5 times that. They're not out of reach, but then the problem is with those is condition of a lot of them. A lot of them are super high miles. The cars can do that, so that's fine. But then it's getting parts to them and things like that, and it's the availability bits which makes it really, really difficult to want one. So that's where your tastes change. That's why I then later moved up to the E39 M5, which is a car now that has also started to go straight up into the stratosphere pricing wise. So it's kind of like, now that's a little bit out of my reach price wise range. But I also don't know if they're that much worth it over, say, a 540 V8 manual or a nice 530 manual. And then that's when you start thinking, okay, actually I can have 70 to 80% of the car with the same look with an M Sport kit that'll still drive great and sound great for way less money. So that's another thing worth thinking in mind, is there's different models and variations. It doesn't have to be that exact spec car that has to be the dream car. It's like when I see E28 520s and 525s rolling around now, they don't have the M Sport kit on, but if somebody's put them low on a nice set of wheels, you look at them and think, do you know what? That is so cool. Actually, that is something I would love to see on the driveway. So that's another way to think of things as well.
I think what's interesting about that, though, is the point you were making about how the condition of certain cars could fall back. But you also mentioned about how prices kind of came right down and now they're going crazy. I think that applies to my dream car. The dream car I had up on my wall when I was a kid was a Lamborghini Countach.
Yes.
And there came a point where you could get a Countach for about 65 grand. Wow. And in fact, Harry Metcalf famously drives his Countach, or was it Countach or Diablo? I forget.
I think it's either Countach or a Diablo. It's one of the two. I'm pretty sure.
I forget
it's Countach,
now.
But yeah,
correct me in the comments. I don't really follow his channel that closely, so forgive me. But yeah, I think there's. I think he drives it all over Europe, and then people are saying, "Well, how can you put the miles on it?" He says, "Because it's a 60 grand car to me," and that's because when he bought it, it was cheap, relatively speaking. Now they're like £1 million. Same with one of my son's dream cars, Murcielagos. There was a time when they came down to about 100,000 ish, 120,000, and now again Murcielagos, you can't get them for much less than $750,000. I think it's $500,000 a minimum, like for an entry level one. But the issue with that is whether it's a car that comes down to 10,000 and goes back up to 50,000, or a car that comes down from several 100,000 down to a 60,000 and then back up to 1,000,000, in all cases, it spent a period of its life being a lot more accessible. So some people might have bought it who wouldn't necessarily have been able to afford the preventative maintenance needed on them, because you take a Lamborghini in and they look at it, that's 500 quid straight away. They've just looked at it and it's 500 quid. So, and I know this because I was asking them the other day, like, oh, if I just needed my car, you to do a little diagnosis on my car. And they were like, oh yeah, that's like 500 quid. It's 2 hours. I'm like, all right. Yes. And, so people would then have been like, oh, well, I'll just try and sort it out myself. And then they'll like maybe get a little bit of a bodge solution to the problem. And then when the cars start to go up in value again, now you're trying to get your hand on a car and it's not been well maintained, or maybe in those cases, those cars maybe needed to be garaged, but the people that bought them for 10 grand didn't have a garage. So they just spent the whole time outside. And then obviously that reduces the numbers of them that stay on the road, and that increases their rarity. And then when people go from, say, when you were young and were interested in a Laguna, some of those people will be like, oh, I want that Laguna when they're old enough to start to afford it. Now the number of those cars has gone down, and now the number of people that want them has gone up, and we all know what that does to the prices.
Well, that's what I was going to say about, because right up until this point in my life, I've completely fallen out of love with Ford for many reasons, but I've always wanted a Sierra Sapphire Cosworth and various other Mark 1 Focus RS, Ford Racing Puma. 10 to 12 years ago, you could have taken 20 grand and bought all three of those. They wouldn't have been fantastic examples, but you could have actually owned all three of them for less than 20 grand.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, there's a couple of examples of this kind of price dip thing. We have to talk about, and a great example is the first gen Audi R8 V8 manual. Now, the one that we had on loan from Audi recently, which was the Top Gear car, that actually came back to Audi and they bought it back because they didn't keep hold of it in quite a state. And it said that they had to spend a lot of money to get it back up to scratch because it wasn't looked after. And even then, with a lot of money spent, that car wasn't perfect. That car had some issues. The suspension wasn't right on it, and that's more money. And especially with the cost of mag ride dampers and things, to get them rebuilt, replaced now is ridiculous. So, those cars are still cheap. So I think what's going to happen with those is the same thing. They're going to get lower and lower in amounts of good cars left, and a lot of them will become parts cars. But as the values go up, they are going to become more sought after by people as the amount of them become less. And then suddenly what was a 25, 30 grand car will be 80 to 100,000. I don't think it'll happen just yet, but mark my words, one day I think that will happen to those.
Yeah, and I think it's a case of, when the people who dream about having them can't afford them, nobody wants them.
Yeah.
They start to go into decline in numbers. And then as the people who desired them when they were younger grow up and can afford them, there's now far fewer of them. So it's just this supply-demand offset. And actually, do you know what? There's opportunities in that for people. They can catch a car when it's at its low point, buy it and keep it, and look at the price in the future. My son was trying to convince me to think about getting an R33 GTR because they're still quite expensive for what they are, but they're at a kind of accessible price at the moment. And he thinks that what's going to happen is people are going to start to realize actually they're pretty good GTRs and their prices are likely to go up. So I was fortunate with the R8 GT as well. I managed to get that at a time when nobody was interested. It was right at the start of the sort of whole COVID thing where everyone thought they had to dump their cars as quickly as possible. Got a good price, and I sold it for more than I bought it for.
Well, I've got another example of the maintenance and the price things is with the Merc outside, actually. Now, what's interesting about that is one of those cars which still, even now, isn't worth loads. It's probably worth somewhere between 6 to 8 grand, maybe 10 if we estimate it. Now,
definitely 100 grand now that you've owned it.
Oh, absolutely.
Provenance.
But looking in the service history, from when that car was bought by the last owner about 20 years ago, in that time, it has probably had 20 to 25,000 pounds spent on it in maintenance and repairs and things like that. Now, that car is known for its legendary kind of reliability and still going on and still being there after all these years. But the reason for that is because it's a Mercedes, and most people who bought those cars, new or used, were in the mindset of, well, this is my Mercedes, it doesn't matter. We'll get it maintained and get it looked after. You know, not a lot of people, I think, up to a point were lusting after W124s and the coupes and the estate variants. They were owned by people with old money, as I like to call it, and who looked after them and maintained them. And that is one of the reasons a car like that has its legendary reliability status and is still going now, even though it's not worth loads, is because the people that bought them looked after them at no expense spared. I'm still actually in the same kind of boat with that as well. Now I've got it, I'm looking after it too. So I'm keeping that service book filled up.
Do you think finance was the cause of that?
Possibly, because people weren't buying their cars anymore. So people were buying more expensive and lavish cars that they actually couldn't afford to maintain because they could afford a monthly payment. People had a down payment, perhaps from selling their old used car or trading it in for £2,000-3,000. Then you've got a £300 a month kind of PCP on it. And okay, the first owner, they've got a service plan, things like that. That's absolutely fine. The car gets looked after. Second owner, maybe third owner, they're buying that car now on HP, which is hire purchase, and they, put that same kind of 2-3 grand down, and they're paying maybe now £200 a month on HP. But the likelihood is, in the current living situation we are in, and the way that people finance absolutely everything, including coffees these days, as soon as something goes wrong on the car, they don't have the money to do it. And their mindset has been, well, I bought this car from a dealer, so it should be in really good condition. It should go on for ages. But you've bought a 5 or 6 year old car, which had a 6-month warranty that is barely worth the paper it's written on anyway. Yeah. And so what happens is, unless it's an absolute necessity, the money doesn't get spent. The amount of cars that I see going around with poor quality tyres, and you can look if you go into your local Tesco car park or any other supermarkets do exist, you look at some of the tyres on cars. Look at a 10-year-old car, that's clearly maybe been recently on finance or is now valueless to someone. The tyres just are probably going to be either really close to being bald or old or the cheapest budget brand they can get, because tyres are, for most people, an emergency purchase. They are, I have to have them. There's nothing else I can do. Put the cheapest set on. And I've been speaking to some people who run tyre places, and they say, yeah, most of the time people put cheap tyres on. I've recently put near £500 worth of tyres on my Golf. I went for kind of upper mid range because I was like, for me, it doesn't matter what car it is that it's on. The tyres have to be decent enough. They are just part of any car's cost. I will refuse to drive on rubbish tyres. But most people don't think that way.
Yeah, it's like, well, the thing is, that's what's in contact with the road.
Yeah.
That is going to be the difference between you staying on the road or leaving the road. Or it's also going to be the difference between you stopping in time and not hitting the back of a car or hitting the back of the car, because the grip on those tyres in the various conditions they need to work determines your braking, your cornering, and all sorts of other things. I test drove a car recently, and I won't say which one, and the tyres on it were just cheap tyres. And I was absolutely terrified in this car. It was squirming up and down the road in a slightly mildly damp road that something like a Michelin Pilot Sport 4S would have no problem.
And that car should have been on a set of those tyres.
It should have been, because it had a fair bit of power on that particular car. But, this is one of the things that James talked about in one of his videos on the main channel about before you go and drive your first supercar or first performance car, is you need to check the tyres, the age of the tyres, the type of the tyres, and so on.
Do you know what is so funny, before we move back on to what Ben has to say? It's so funny because I actually had an Instagram page kind of recommended to me recently, which is some kind of Ferrari club page. I check these things out occasionally. And I saw this F12 on there, and it was similar to James's. It was a lovely spec, nice plate on it as well. The car looked immaculate and great. And I thought, I'll use a little reg check on it. Just curious to see what the mileage is on the previous MOTs. It's on about 22,000 miles, and for the past 3-4 MOTs, it's had the advisory of rear tyres cracked and perished, and it's done 2,000 miles per every MOT. Those are probably the original tyres on that car still from
Crazy.
like 2015 or I think the car was. And you just think, you've got a car of that caliber and that much expense. Is it because you financed it? Is that why? Is it because you're trying to run that car on a budget, or you just feel like you don't drive it enough, or you only drive it in the dry on random? The mindset boggles.
I think some people don't realise it's a problem.
No, definitely not. My car, when I bought it, has the worst no-name brand tyres on it possible. The first owner spec'd it from Park Lane BMW in London. Really nice spec. And he had it for 9 years, and then the next owner had it for about a year and a bit. And I can guarantee the guy driving it around London didn't put, I don't even know what, Super Chaser runway Achilles heel ditch finder specials on it. They are frustratingly basically brand new tires, and I want them off of my car because they're awful. I've managed to, in a 520D, brake traction and go sideways on a roundabout for nothing, and it wasn't even that wet. It was damp.
No, and my father has a 520D F11 Touring, much like yours, and he's got good tyres. I can't remember the ones he's got on there, but they're not cheap. We don't cheap out on tyres around here, and we've never had a single traction issue in wet or in dry with the same amount of power, the same gearbox, and also the same ability to put my foot down like a bit of a lemon, because we all do that occasionally. And yeah, so it shows that tyres are so important.
I want them off the car as quick as possible because I've used Falcons for nearly 15 years on my car. They last really well. They're good in the rain. They're great in the dry. And I've used 3 or 4 of their different various tyres, depending on what car I'm putting them on. And I've been happy the entire way down the line. This is not sponsored by Falcon. But yeah, I just want those tyres off my car. They're lethal.
What I would say to anyone who wants to know about the performance of tyres, if they haven't done it before, is go to tyrereviews.com.
Yes.
This is not sponsored, but tyrereviews.com and the Tyre Reviews YouTube channel, fantastic, where an expert actually tests the tyres, and you can actually compare the performance of the tyres in dry, in the wet, what their wear rates are, and there's loads of feedback from people who've actually owned the tyres as well. So do check that out. But on the topic of dream cars, I'm curious, what was your number one dream car when you were, let's say, 5, 15, and 25?
Right, okay. I can answer those for you. When I was 5, probably been a Jaguar XJ220, because even though in many regards that wasn't the most liked supercar, I thought it looked so cool. And it does look pretty cool still, that car. And it helped that I had a kind of a die-cast XJ220, whatever it was. And it was actually like a fairly large size one as well. So yeah, that was one when I was 5. When I was 15, it was the E28 M5. And when I was 25, it was probably a mix between the E39 M5 and the Alfa Giulia Quadrifoglio, because I think that would have been out at the time, around that kind of era. So
That makes me feel so old.
yeah.
Ben?
When I was 5, it would have been the McLaren F1, because I had a supercar book bought for me. It was a hardback book, and it had like the Lotus Carlton in there because that was the fastest 4-door saloon in the world, etc.
Do you know what? I'm pretty sure I had the same book as well. Did it have the McLaren F1 on the front side?
Yeah, it did. It had the McLaren F1 on the front, at kind of a bit of an angle like that. It was the papaya orange one, or whichever.
Do you know what? We're going to look at my bookshelf later. That's here, and we're going to look, because I think I've got that book here.
If you've got that book, I'll be so happy, because mine is long gone, like 20 years ago. It lived in our toilet for like 10 years and was just the book to read. When I was 15, I would imagine that my dream car at the time, playing Gran Turismo 4, would have probably been the E60 M5. That was just the best car for me. And when I was 25, it was the Mark II Focus RS, because it wasn't super current at the time. It was probably about 5 or 6 years old at that point. But yeah, it was just what I wanted. I wanted the ultimate green. Yeah.
I actually have one more car to add on to that. And considering I've been driving the car this week, I don't know why I haven't said it. Of course, the Rally Celica GT4 was up there because I played Sega Rally as a kid, and I played it on the Sega Saturn of all things that my brother Stephen gave to me when I was younger. It was a hand-me-down console, but hand-me-down consoles were always the best if you've got an older brother because they
came with tons of games.
They came with tons of games and tons of really good games.
Yeah.
And I spent so much time on Sega Rally and the first Need for Speed. So actually the Celica, that's another car, realizing about it, that's kind of a dream car, and that is a car worth meeting.
In those gaps, though, in ages between 5 and 10 and 15 and 20 and 25, there have been so many.
So many.
So many.
Goodness,
like
so many.
Subaru Impreza, Focus RS Mark 1, just so many because of the influences at the time, what you're into. If you're into touring cars, it's going to be a four-door saloon, or it was back in the 90s anyway. And then if you're into rallying, it's going to be whatever rally cars out there and whoever you support, whether it be Tommy Mackinnon in the Evo or Colin McRae in the Impreza and then the Focus, Sebastian Loeb's, the C4. The Citroen C4 that he debuted in 2003 odd. My neighbour across the road at one point had a red one that had a black spoiler on it. It was a Loeb edition. It had some nice wheels on it and stuff like that. I later found out it was just a 1.4 with it was literally just a body kit and wheels special. But I loved it because it was right across the road and I was like, wow, that's awesome. To me, that was as good as seeing an Impreza, or a Focus RS across the road because it was bright red and it had the Loeb name on it, But then again, like I said before, you kind of get a bit older and you find out, it was just a 1.4. It wasn't even a quick one. It was just a Plax and body kit.
A dream car doesn't have to be a fast car.
No,
it doesn't
absolutely
have to be a performance car. I used to remember that actually because a lot of what influenced what I was into was what was on TV as well on the car shows.
Yeah, I was going to get to that.
Top Gear, Wheeler Dealers. Those were some of the shows, obviously, that made you fall in love with cars. Wheeler Dealers especially was where I found my love for the Lexus LS 400 and cars like that. And the C4 Corvette, that was another car that I used to really want. It's just one of those Peugeot 106 GTIs as well. That was a big thing for me, and I think that stems from perhaps you having the lower spec version of like the better cars. So I had the Peugeot 106 1.1s for a while, and my friends had 106 GTIs, 106 Quicksilvers, Saxo VTSs, VTRs, and I yearned for the French. I yearned for those 120 horsepower JP4 engines or whatever they were, and nowadays, again, cars that are going up silly in value, probably nearing 10 grand for a nice one now, when they're only a couple of grand.
But that's going back to what Ant said. Those sorts of cars were mass-produced, mass-market, and they cost absolutely nothing, and they were literally just throwaway cars. They were like washing machines. When they broke and it cost more than 500 quid to fix, off it went. And then you go buy another one, because if you could buy one for 1,500 quid and it was costing you nearly £1,000 to put tyres and bushes and a suspension spring on, then you just scrap it and go and buy another one that didn't have those problems.
That's why I had 3 Peugeot 106s, because one got knackered and I just bought another.
We are the last, possibly not you, I'm not sure, because we're kind of different age brackets across the board a little bit, but I think my generation, mine and James's, were the last people to buy sub £1,500 cars as their first cars in cash, because everyone... maybe you did as well. How old are you?
I'm 24. So not 24, bloody hell. I'm 34, Christ. No, we're talking about all these cars that I had when I was 24.
I forgot you're that old.
You're all within a few years.
I thought you were 31. Honestly, I've had my mind to early 30s.
I'm 34, 35 next year.
It's because he looks so good. It's his skincare routine.
Yeah, he's a very youthful looking human.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, the beard, it hides all the imperfections.
Yeah. Meanwhile, you've got your L'Oreal advert hairstyle today.
Man, there's a fan on over there off camera, and I was hoping they'd be strong enough to give me that constant blow. Anyway, if you went down to, for example, Sainsbury's car park on a Friday night, and there would be, such was the culture at the time, because people actually went out and drove their cars. I found even towards the end of my days trying to sort of go around and actually drive cars with people, that people would just not want to, they'd want to go and sit in the car park and just sit there. And then 6 hours later, they would just drive it home again. And me and a few friends would just drive down there and go, we're going to go to Southend. Are you coming with us? And then you could see the look in the faces was like, nah, whether it just couldn't afford the fuel or whatever. But this is what I'm getting to, is that We bought £1,500 cars because you could buy even like an £800 old Escort from the side of the road that had 6 months ticket left on it and a few months tax, because you could buy cars with tax attached to them.
Yes.
So your only
Yes.
cost was insurance and the tank of fuel that went in it to drive it away. That was it. And people used to do that. But even towards the end of when I was sort of, my early 20s, driving around and going to see if we could pick up a few people to go on a convoy down to wherever, you'd start to see, some 18-year-old in a brand new Polo that had a sticker price of 13,000. You're like, how did you do that? Oh, I've got some mental 0% deal where I put £1,000 in and it's like £200 a month. And it's like, wow. But when I first started, 9 out of 10 cars in the car park, you'd always have that rich kid with a brand new car, but 9 out of 10 cars in the car park could be worth £2,000 or less. And people just worked part-time jobs, scraped together a bit of money and bought their neighbour's car, or the old dear down the road stopped driving, so they bought themselves a 1.1 Saxo or something like that. But now you see 18, 19, 20-year-olds rolling around in Golf Rs because they've got the finance on it. £300 a month, Golf R.
Yeah.
And then it's modified and tuned stage 2.5, whatever it is they call it these days.
The mods aren't declared.
The mods aren't declared. Do you know what? Going off on a little bit of a tangent here. I don't want to see these pages, but because of certain things that you look at on like Facebook are to do with cars, I think you want to see everything to do with cars. It'll be like, oh, we pulled over this car today because it had no insurance. And you think it'd be like some old ratted out Primera or something. They're pulling over Range Rovers that are barely 5 years old and taking them off the road for no insurance. A damn near brand new A-Class, the A-Class shooting brake. And it was like, oh yeah, this driver was found to have a provisional license and no insurance. And it's like, where did you get the money to buy a £40,000 car and then not insure it? And brother, you don't have a license.
It's like you just said moments ago, it's a couple of thousand down. And monthly payments that you figure you can just about afford,
just
but
great.
nothing else.
Yeah. And going back to the R8 thing, I wanted an R8 V8 manual, especially after driving that one that Audi UK that very kindly lent us. I was intoxicated by it because again, the whole diminishing returns on your amount of money and power that you have spent to get that power. That car is perfect. It's like the perfect sports car for the UK roads. It's stable, it's got the four-wheel drive, it's got that power. But I hadn't ever looked at R8s before, never had an interest. And then Jay says to me like a year ago, oh, we might be getting this car turn up, would you want to drive it? And I'm like, yeah, of course, that'd be great. And now I'm like, I can't believe that they went under my radar all this time and they're at an affordable price. But that's a problem. Because like you said, you might be able to scrape together the 10% deposit at £3,000 and put the other 27 grand over 5 years at nearly £500 a month. But what you can't do is be ready for when you go, oh, well, that knocking noise is getting worse. Oh, this doesn't feel right. And you drive it in, they go, oh, yeah, it needs this bush. Oh, and all 4 shocks need redoing, £10,000, please. At which point you just go, well, I'm selling it. And now you're selling a broken car and you're upside down on the finance. Yeah. And
you see, I'm quite lucky with the Merc because I can do a lot of the work myself. Yeah. And when I look through those invoices, I would say a good 60 to 70% of that invoice was labour.
Yeah.
It was not parts.
Yeah.
It was the actual cost for doing it. So with me, as long as I get the parts, and the parts are actually pretty reasonably priced for that platform, I'll just do it on my drive.
But it does
like
scare me.
Done.
It scares me when you go to look at buying a car. Like you said with that Jag, I was actually going to get into that a little while ago. You said, oh, it's got a folder this thick. And you read on eBay or Auto Trader, and that doesn't matter whether it's a £5,000 car, a £10,000 car, a £20,000, £30,000 car. If someone says, oh, maintained regardless of cost, I've just put £4,000 into this car, and you look back through the things and it's like, you spent £3,000 at this. Guess what you're about to do over the next 12 months? Mm-hmm. If he's put £3,000 to £5,000 into this thing because it's 15, 20, 25 years old, performance, sports, hot car, guess what you're about to do?
You're about to be doing the same.
You're about to do a £3,000 to £5,000 buy or a spend on a car that you only bought for £5,000, £10,000, £15,000. My focus is exactly the same.
But, one of the things that frustrates me sometimes with this conversation, and this I think is still related to dream cars, because it's about, how do you get access to one of your dream cars at some point in your life? And it comes down to this, that people say, oh, I've spent all this money keeping this car on the road. How often do people talk about, well, I've spent all of this money on depreciation? So you can go out and buy these new cars.
Oh God!
Yeah. You can buy these new cars. You can lose 50 grand on it, and then what? Like what? Where's the issue there? And this is one of the things for me right now is like I'm kind of torn a little bit in trying to choose the next car that I want to have in the stable, and that is partly because I'm like, I want reliability, but I also don't want a car that depreciates a load.
You're buying at a perfect price point. You are buying at such an amazing price point. There are so many options. Obviously,
That's the problem as well.
Some of them are
Spoiled
written
for
out,
choice.
like because of your personal tastes, needs, requirements,
Yeah, yeah.
things like that. But at £25,000, if you look at a car that was £100,000 5 years ago,
Yeah.
something unobtainable to most people, you can now pick them up for around £25,000 to £30,000 because that's just what depreciation has done to it. Like, look at Range Rovers. Holy moly, you can get a severely nice car for £25,000 to £30,000 with a Range Rover badge on it that was 100,000 plus.
But the problem, as we've said before, he's got to be careful because those cars that were £100,000 still have the bills of a car that are £100,000 now.
Yeah.
So it is picking and choosing. It's a losing game because if you buy the right car, that maintenance could be offset by the fact that it may not actually depreciate that much, or there is the possibility with the right car that the value will either stay the same or maybe even go up, but that's not a given.
Yeah, so this is part of the issue for me at the moment is like, for example, that Lexus, again, a bit over my budget, low 30s rather than 25, but close enough. But it comes with a 12-month warranty from the main dealer. So you're like, well, okay, I could have basically virtually no costs of maintenance over the next year, apart from, maybe tires and brakes or whatever. But how much is it going to depreciate in that year?
The next question is, how long are you going to keep it for? Are you keeping it for a year? Are you keeping it for 2 years? Are you going to keep it just in the warranty period? Because if you keep it just in the warranty period and then you go, okay, I've essentially, other than maybe brakes and tyres, if required, put no money into this car, and I've sold it for what I bought it. Say you bought it 30,000, and you've now sold it for 25. Okay, in that time, you could consider that like a PCP payment, know, over that time.
Yeah.
That's realistically what a lot of people will spend in a certain amount of time on
that's
PCP
400 quid a
payments.
month.
Also, with Lexuses, just because I have a little bit of inner knowledge here, because my brother has a Lexus, the huge 4x4 with the V6 and the hybrid system. If he takes it to Lexus every year for a service, they extend his warranty by 12 months.
They do that with Renault as well.
They do it with Renault as well. So if you've
Up to 10 years old and 100,000 miles.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think
some
his has done anywhere near
stipulations,
that.
these,
His is
but-
a 20 plate, so he doesn't have to worry. But also, what you have to think about as well is that if you did buy that Lexus, because of their reliability status, if you spent, say, £32,000 buying it and it comes with a 12-month warranty, by the end of that year, you will have spent £32,000. Whereas you could say to yourself, actually, I've always fancied an Evo 8, really wanted one of those, get a good one for £25,000. You will put money into that car to the point where it's a £32,000 car by the end of the year, and you could have just bought the Lexus and not had those headaches.
Exactly. And this is the challenge when people do finally get the opportunity to buy that dream car. It's the bills that it's going to come with. I've heard also similar horror stories with all sorts of cars, R8s being among them, Ferraris also. Like, there was a point in time where the 348, that was one of my dream cars. So when I was 5, I think my dream car was probably a Countach around that time. I think Countach came out in 72, thereabouts.
Was it that long ago?
77.
It had such a long life. It was a stupidly long life.
I think they had
I
about
view
2
that as an
editions.
80s car.
No, it was
No.
designed in the 70s originally.
Yeah, it really did have a lot. I think it had an 18 or 19 year lifespan before they introduced the Diablo, and it went through so many different iterations and add-ons and everything. It's a fascinating
That's
car.
unheard of these days.
Utterly unheard of.
Yeah. So when I was in the late 70s, I was 5, and I'm pretty sure that was my dream car, and I had versions of that on the wall for many years. And then Miami Vice happened, and then that remained my dream car. And by then, I think I had a Koenig special of the Countach poster, or white one on the wall. Yep. And then of course, Miami Vice comes along. I wasn't really a big fan of the fake Daytona, but then when the Testarossa came in, a white one. Are you seeing the theme here?
Yeah. It's conditioning from a young age.
That became one of my dream cars. And then by the time I got to my sort of late teens, late teens, going into my 20s, it was an MG Metro Turbo. Because
again, that seems realistic,
that
right?
was the car that well, even then, I mean, I was so poor at that point in time
Oh,
that
of course, yeah.
the idea of being able to afford that was completely out of the question.
Yeah.
But it was a car that I literally lusted after day after day after day after day. But for me, though, I've never lost that desire to have more, to have something beyond that, like,
How much
yeah,
are they now?
Lamborghini.
Any idea?
MG Metro Turbos.
Yeah.
You'll probably get a good one under 10 grand these days. I think some of them are floating about 6 or 7.
Okay, I've got an alternate idea. You spend £15,000 on a 320D to get you to here and back, and then you spend the other £10,000 on the car that you never got from 40 odd years ago, and just have it. If it's a nightmare, it's a nightmare. You sell it in 6 months.
Life's too short to drive boring cars for me.
But you
At
have
my
a
age.
Metro.
I'll
Okay,
get there, I'll get there.
you get yourself something more fun and interesting for under 15, and then you put your MG Metro Turbo on the drive as well. There you go.
That's it, that was
there
it.
you
Your
go.
25,000 budget
One
split.
you take a 1 car budget and turn it into two
Two-car
cars.
budget.
And then on a cheaper car like that, less depreciation to worry about in that 15 grand mark.
Yep.
Yeah.
You see, we've solved it. So last week's video about Ant finding a new car,
Complete
done.
waste of time.
Complete waste of time. MG Metro Turbo,
320D.
and I don't know, first or second gen Porsche Boxer, something I don't know.
But I mean, a big part of that transition, of course, for me was the fact that, like my son describes, you know, his dream car was for a little while an RX-8, which now he has probably one of the best ones in the country, and that has had a lot of money spent on it, including by him as well as the previous owner. But it's kind of gets to that point where your dream shifts and brings things closer to you. But I think what I've also noticed with dream cars as we get older is, for some people, the Pagani, well, the Lamborghini, the Ferrari, the Pagani, the Koenigsegg, the whatever brand it is, as they get further and further away in price, people then just say, oh, I'm not interested in them anymore. And I think that's interesting, because both me and my son are like, yeah, those are still our poster cars. And maybe one day, you never know what can happen. Maybe one day we'll get there and we can own one of them. Even maybe between us, maybe even between all of us, we might end up owning one. You never know. So it's never like an out of the question thing. But even if it was out of the question, I think I can still appreciate the craftsmanship that's gone into those cars, the design, some of the carbon fiber work on some of it is just incredible, isn't it?
Okay, let's have 2 categories then. Unrealistic dream car, like Bugatti Veyron,
Yep.
because even if you buy one of those, you have to have just as deeper pockets just to keep it on the road.
Oh, yeah.
And then a realistic dream car, something that you could say, like, I would like a Ferrari. Really, if I were to say my realistic dream car right now that I would like to buy, that I actually have convinced myself I could run, maybe if my business does well enough, in 10 years' time when I'm nearly 50.
And what is that business, by the way?
This is Mile By Mile Valeting. Find me on Instagram, Facebook, Google, anywhere you like.
And what areas do you generally serve as well?
I generally serve Bedfordshire, Hertfordshire, Cambridgeshire, Buckinghamshire, and anywhere you want. If you're, no, it's not fleet, is it? It's collection. If your collection is big enough, there's enough work, I will go to the nths of the earth to get to you.
You'll even go to Luton?
I will even go to Luton.
Oh, wow. But yeah, you were saying about, the realistic and unrealistic
I
dream
would
cars.
like a Ferrari 360.
They're great.
Just a Ferrari 360 because I think...
Just
because it is just. It's now the grandfather of the grandfather of the grandfather of the grandfather of the current car that's out now. It's old, but that was the car that was kind of in the zeitgeist when I was an early to mid-teenager watching Top Gear. And they would put it up against the Gallardo and, things like this. And it was just the one that constantly just looks good to me. And I saw one. It was completely stock. It didn't have the CS rear grille, which I personally like. It had the standard 5-spoke wheels, and it was just driven by just a normal looking bloke at a car event, and it was in red, and it had the cream leather interior. And I looked at it and just thought, I really like that. It's not flash, it's not the fastest thing in the world. It will get outran by any generation of Golf R in a straight line, and I don't care. You can get the manual gearbox, and there's almost no nanny state controls on it, because James's F430, sorry, it's not an F430.
It's a 430
Scuderia. And that's just got a little bit more technologia inside technologia. And it doesn't detract from the car at all, but it really, the 360 is the last of the sort of truly analog cars. It's still got analog dials, analog everything else. It's got electric window, electric wing mirrors and things like this, but it just still appeals after all this time. And there just doesn't seem to be a downside to it, because the downside to the 355 that everyone spoke about over the years was the cam belt. You have to take the engine out, you have to drop everything out of the car, and it's a huge job. Whereas with the 360, they fixed that. They put some sort of like a panel. You literally undo a few things. There's a panel. Oh, there's the cam belt. There it is. So it goes from a $3,000 job to like an 800 or £1,000 job, whatever it is.
I think 360s are still a nightmare with dual ECUs though, and other things like
Yeah,
that.
there's other nightmares to do with them. But again, like I said, before, and like we've all said, you have the poster of the Countach on the wall or whatever when you're a kid, because you don't understand money.
Yeah.
You don't understand that when you get to 18 years old, you think, oh, when I'm an adult, I'll just buy one, because you see the money coming out of the hole in the wall, and you don't understand how that gets there, or what effort is required, or how much is realistically obtainable. So when you hit 18 on your 18th birthday, you don't just wander down the street and buy a Countach, because it just doesn't happen. So your dream cars change along with your circumstance, and as well as the fact that you might have 2 children and a dog by that point. So the R8 V10 now turns into an RS4 or an RS6 as your dream car, because then you can fit your family in it and they can enjoy it as well. So there's various different factors, knowledge of cars. Like, for example, I love the Transporter, the original Jason Statham film. And I saw the 7 Series in that, but I didn't realise until nearly 20 years after I'd watched that movie for the first time and fallen in love with that 7 Series, that it was completely not possible to have that car. It had a manual conversion that was done especially for the film. It wasn't the V12 because they badged it as the 750. It was a 735 or a 740. It had a V8. And so I just thought, I don't want one of those anymore, because I didn't realise as a kid watching Frank shifting through the manual that wasn't possible. So I found out that it was actually just going to have a 5-speed Slush-O-Matic from the late 90s. So I don't want that car anymore. And there's various different things as you get older that change your perspective of what your dream car is. And you might also find that you don't want to go to illegal cruise events and go up the A1 at 170 mile an hour with people. That's not, I'm not saying I did that.
No,
but
of course
you
not,
see
allegedly.
things. No, I really didn't. I've always, because of where I grew up on back roads. So when I started, I live in the middle of the countryside. So when you leave my house, you just have access to just mile after mile of just back roads, which is why I drove supermotos as a kid, or as a in my 20s. I didn't like superbikes. I had a superbike for 6 months and I was like, oh, this is boring. You try and take a superbike like a ZX6 through the back roads and it's horrible. It's jarring. You can't do it. They're built for tracks. They're built for going in a straight line on a dual carriageway. Boring. Went back to supermoto because you can cut through country lanes doing 60 mile an hour, not breaking the speed limit and still having loads of fun. Going back to the car side of things, if I had wanted a supercar at that point, that's not where they're built for going. You don't go through back lanes in a supercar. They're too wide, they're too fast, they're too extreme. And I have experienced many supercars on back roads where you're going through a gap going, oh, Christ.
F12.
F12. You've got the wing mirrors on this side, which cost a lot of money, and you're going past bushes that are this far. If you're on audio only and not video, I'm holding my hands about an inch away because that's how but there's a Range Rover coming the other way. The person doesn't know the width of their vehicle, so they're way
And they're on the phone.
And they're on the phone. Definitely on the phone. And get off your phone. And there you go. For those not able to watch, no.
Don't describe that.
I'm just gesticulating.
It's terrifying. So then you think, well, what is good to go down a country lane? So you start liking hot hatches, but I never liked hot hatches. I always grew up loving saloon cars because that's what I grew up with. I grew up with Sierras, Mondeos, 405s. My dad even had an Impreza for 6 months from a job that he was in. And so I bought, my first car was a Fiesta Zetec S 1.6 Mark V. Everyone had them. They were everywhere. And they were amazing on back roads because you could go through like 4 gears and still not really be breaking the law at all. And they handled fantastically right up until they rotted out from underneath you.
And that is it's funny actually. You're saying about cars, with the circumstances, the dog and the kids. It is so true. Going from wanting an R8 to an RS4 Avant or something like that. Or something along those lines. So yeah, there is, as I was saying earlier, about perhaps going for the lesser spec version of the car you wanted, there are so many ways where your dream car can be attainable and still get 80 to 90% of that original experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I had to settle for. I don't mean settle for because I'm selling it at the moment. It's killing me. It's like ripping off a Band-Aid really slowly. Someone buy my Focus. But I wanted a Mark II Focus RS. That's where I was going because I bought the Mark VII Fiesta ST when it came out. I bought it about 2.5 years old. It had 10,000 miles on it, loads of extras, lovely. And I thought this is the next stepping stone in towards getting my Focus. And I had that thing for 4 years, and then I had my son. So we sort of not struggled on because the Fiesta, honestly, is like a TARDIS. We went on for a couple of years with the Fiesta ST. And then I thought, right, I'm going to go and get my Focus. But by this point, finances had been taken up by a bigger house to accommodate for having a child and with all the costs that brings. And I ended up with a 5-door Focus ST, and I've been happy as punch with it because you do get about 80% of it. You know, the interior looks the same, bar a couple of badges. You know, the seats I actually think are more comfortable in the Focus ST because of the big leather Recaros than they are. So it's like a don't meet your heroes moment. I've sat in various different iterations of those Recaro CS seats, and they're fantastic if you're on track and you really need to be held in. On a journey, no, they don't work.
I love the CS. I've got them in the 370Z Nismo, and they are like my favourite seats ever.
Have you done a 3-hour road trip in them?
Oh yeah, I've driven.
Really?
Yeah, driven loads and loads.
You still need to drive my Focus before it sells. Buy my Focus.
Yeah, but remember, Ant is not human. He is kind of like he's like also some kind of like sadomasochist because he just loves getting abused by his cars. You know, so if he's punched in the spine, punched in the back, thrown about, jiggled, kind of killed, he's happy. That's how a car should be for him.
He's got Tom Cruise, Keanu Reeves syndrome, where he's actually getting younger as he gets older, which means that he likes at this age to tolerate the sort of car that I think right now would probably piss me off.
No.
He's ride comfort. But you, as hard as you like, I was in your Lamborghini only a couple of weeks ago, and I was sat there like this, going down this back road, and I was thinking, I couldn't tolerate this for very long.
That's my happy place.
He's like Jason Statham cranking. He's keep his adrenaline up.
Keeps me awake.
Exactly.
Oh God, not in the second one where he has to put the.
See, there you go though, and that's the thing. That is one of my dream car moments. It's not a Countach. That's an example, right? One of my dream car was a Countach. A Gallardo is not a Countach.
It's objectively better.
I'm sure it is, but I got there.
Yeah.
It took me about 51 years from start to finish to get there, but I got there, and I have it, and I can probably hold on to that for the foreseeable future. And
I don't think it's actually recognised how much of an achievement that actually is, Fran, by the way, because I've only known Ant for a short time, about a year or so, but he is, just on a personal note, just a really nice person who's actually helped me out a lot recently, just with some advice to help me with my business, and knowing where you came from and where you are now, and also meeting your son as well, who is a credit to you. I just think you deserve it. You deserve everything that you've got and more in the future.
thank you. I really appreciate it. You make me blush.
Yep, I can attest to that as well. Same thoughts and feelings.
Oh, thanks, guys. Appreciate that. Yeah. If you have only just watched today, then yeah, I was homeless at 18. So I was couch surfing for about 2 years before I managed to turn my life around and get into the whole bunch of stuff around computing and software engineering, became good at it. And now people pay me very good money to advise them on how to do it even better. So although I'm only doing that with very select clients now. So you have to be genuinely willing to take your company to the absolute limit of competitiveness. You have to want to be you want to have to beat the competition hands down.
God, I hope I'm like that in 5, 10, 15 years somewhere. I can actually choose my clientele. Not that my clientele are not lovely. I love you all.
Yeah.
Everyone that I've met through my work is great, but I'd love to be able to be one of those sort of very exclusive, like work for just a few companies or individuals and look after their collections. Or
that would be cool. I think
really
you can
good.
be there. I think you get there. Anyway, changing the subject away from me now and collections. We're getting towards the end. We've talked about our dream cars when we were younger. Well, very young. Still young. and still young, but older. Right now, today's next dream car.
Right, well, I'm going to go to one that I was going to mention earlier but forgot to. And of course, it's the first generation Dodge Viper. That car for me was one in my childhood that I always lusted over. And now I think they're pretty reasonable. I don't know what the pricing is of them. Do you guys know what they are price-wise currently?
They are incredibly cheap for what, honestly, if you looked at one, and if you saw one at a show and you'd be like, wow, that's 80, £100,000 car. They are not. You can get them for about £40,000.
Really?
Early ones, yeah. There was
Wow.
one on CarWow a few years ago when Matt went out to America. I think it was the Peterson Museum, and they bought out one of the very first Dodge Vipers. It was in red. It was like a really late 92 or early 93. And he basically was told that it was worth about $35,000, which is about £30,000. And I just thought, for such a historical vehicle in such a condition, and I can't imagine that they made millions of them. How are they not worth anything? It's baffling.
And they, of course, they had the truck one as well, didn't they? Which was quite nice. So it's a truck engine, a V10 in from the Viper in the truck as well. Because was it a truck engine
SRT10
originally?
Dodge
Yeah,
Ram.
Yeah, I think the Viper, it was a truck engine they put in it, wasn't it? So it's not
Right,
the other way
originally it
around.
was a truck engine
Yeah.
that they decided to put in a sports car, which I think is hilarious.
Yes.
Didn't Lamborghini help Dodge with that engine? Am I right in saying?
I think it was. I think they did. There was some part
There,
of the
there was an
development.
exchange of services there. Lamborghini helped Dodge with the engine, and then Dodge or whatever group it is, Chrysler Group, helped Lamborghini with something at the time. I can't remember the story. It was quite interesting. I did read about it a long time ago.
Well, I'll tell you what, we'll look that up and we'll let you know in the next episode. But the Dodge Viper, I think, is very cool for a number of reasons. First of all, on our travels yesterday, my son and I, he spotted in this particular dealership one of those SRT 10s. It was huge, red, white stripes. It was, yeah, he was just going on about it. Oh, the other thing we spotted was a Mitsubishi Evo 8 Estate.
Oh, wow.
I love them.
Yes, it was
My
bonkers. Apparently, it was like 400 horsepower or something crazy. He was like, "That's the car you should
Let me
be
guess,
getting."
it was like 35 grand.
Don't remember. I didn't look at the price because I'm not interested. It's an estate.
Fair enough.
But on the other note, the V10 Dodge Viper is a car that my son Damani also absolutely loves because, as his air quotes in between job, leaving university and before he then got his engineering role, his in between job was as a race instructor, drift instructor at one of these driving experience companies, and they happened to have a Dodge Viper, and that was his favorite car to take people around in hot laps because it was just so bonkers.
Imagine getting paid to
absolutely
do
wants
that.
one. Oh yeah, you don't get paid very much because it is such a fun thing to do. But it was not too far from where he lived, so it didn't cost him too much to get there. It was something he enjoyed doing. He got paid for it, and it was just in between while he was trying to get the right engineering role, which he is in now. But that's for another day when we can have him back as a guest. Maybe he can tell us a little bit about that journey. But Ben, current dream car.
Well, my current dream car, actually, like I said, it was the R8. But then I thought, well, maybe one day, the business does well enough in a few years' time, I can scrape together that £3,000 and finance the rest of it. I couldn't afford I would be that guy. But I'm not going to go through with it because obviously I couldn't afford if it throws up huge bills, especially if it does it more than once.
Well, there is a place you can get an R8 from where that might not be as big an issue. And this isn't sponsored. So RE Performance, Ricky Elder's place down in Swindon, are now doing vehicle sales and storage.
Oh.
And a part of the package when you're selling the car through him is that you've basically got to pay him a fee for him to basically do a complete once over on the car and make sure that it's in good condition. Because obviously if he's selling it to a consumer, that consumer can then bring the car back if there's any issues. Now, of course, you wouldn't expect to get a car from him like cheap as a private sale, but the chances of it actually being well sorted is a lot higher. And I've been taking my R8 GT to him for years, my former R8 GT, I should say, for years. So maybe that's another avenue to consider.
Many years in the future, but for now, in the sort of maybe in the next sort of 2 to 3 years, again, God willing, everything going well, I watched a CarWow video this morning of Matt Watson comparing the first generation Audi RS3 from 09 2010
Yep.
to the latest one and saying, how much more do you really get for spending 6 times the amount of money? Because you can pick them up now for around 10 grand and the new one's over 60.
Yeah.
And that's not the car I'm interested in because it's just too small on the inside. It's kind of like an estate kind of hatch kind of looking thing, but it's just not big enough on the inside. And I know that this is very contradictory, but I then remembered for the first time in a decade that the TTRS exists.
Yes.
And I had...
They're quick.
Yeah, they are really quick.
I've been offered one.
Well, now I know that the obviously the convertible one hasn't got back seats, and the back seats are token in the coupe, but it does still have back seats. But if I'm going to buy a car that looks like a big estate car, I need it to be a big estate car. If I buy a car that's a coupe, I've already accepted that it's a coupe and I don't expect it to have much space in it. So I looked at these things and yes, they have their problems. But I just forgot that they exist and they come as standard with 360 horsepower from what I am now having to sell to fund my business, a 2.5 litre 5-pot turbo engine. And you could get one with a manual. And I was completely blown away because he said, oh, this is also the same platform shared with the blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh my God. And I looked at the prices of them and they are not expensive. They start at 10 grand, but you really want to spend about 15 to 16 to get one that's not high mileage or a bit ratty and things like that. But that's far more realistic. And the running costs are going to be more realistic because underneath it's just got the Haldex 4-wheel drive system. It's not the full Quattro 4-wheel drive system with all the bills that brings with it. And it's also not a V8, it's a 5-cylinder. So yeah, I think right now that might be my sort of realistic dream car to get back into a manual 5-pot that's going to be a bit of fun.
Fair enough. Well, my dream car is a Rimac Nevera. No, it's not really. I mean, it is actually one of my dream cars, but it's £2.1 million plus
Pocket change.
plus bespokeness.
That goes in the realm of just fantasy dream car.
Fantasy dream car. But next reachable dream car, I think is a 600 LT. Yeah, McLaren 600 LT Spider.
Is that the one with the exhaust that come out of the top of it?
Yep.
Fully endorsed backed.
Yeah, with the flame tune, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
It's got to be the Spider because you need to be able to drop the rear window down so the exhaust pipes are literally right by your ear.
Would moving on the Lambo give you the ability to get that, do you think?
Absolutely.
Theoretically, right now, because I got rid of... Yeah, theoretically. But I wouldn't want... I don't want to do that.
So, but the thing is, though, that means it is actually obtainable in theory. So it could happen. Yeah. It could happen in the future. Just watch this space.
Yeah, watch this space. Watch this space. Watch this space.
Not like in the next year, but, just watch this space.
And speaking of watch this space, if you haven't subscribed already, you really, really should because it really helps us when it comes to talking to brands who might then potentially sponsor us. And therefore, that allows us to keep making the content that you enjoy. But Ben, I want to say a huge thank you for coming down and supporting us today because as we haven't mentioned, James is still not back from his mission overseas.
But
he will be next time.
But we're going to say the next video will be a special one from James on his travels with our good channel friend and good buddy friend Chris as well.
Hey.
Indeed. But yeah, Ben, thanks for coming down today. And one more plug for your business, Mile By Mile Valeting. And they can find you where?
You can find me at Mile By Mile Valeting on Instagram at milebymile.co.uk.
And I have to say, he does a great job. He's cleaned the RX-8 for me so far and the Lamborghini. And honestly, I cleaned that Lamborghini, I think, and then I didn't see you for like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And I brought it back and I hadn't had it washed in that whole time. I had driven it. All I'd done is whenever I got it home, I would just kind of spray it down with some quick detailer and wipe it down. And you said, have you had it cleaned recently? I went, no, not since the last time you did it. It was still clean. So he does a fantastic job. And thanks for joining us. And Will, thank you for being awesome as always.
The man in the cans.
It's a pleasure to just be myself and just, I think that's the only way to describe just to be here and be myself.
Yes. And on that note, I'm going to say goodbye from me, Ant. And of course, check me out on Sports and Touring as well as JayEmm and Friends. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Like, subscribe, and all of that other stuff.
Bye-bye.
Bye.